Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about adding or subtracting directed numbers as part of number and indices. So adding or subtracting directed numbers is exactly the same as adding or subtracting integers or any other number, but we have a different rule that applies when certain things happen. So let's go through the rule and then let's talk about when we apply this rule. So the rule is that if the symbols are the same, for example, it's a plus and a plus or a minus and a minus, then they will then be equal to a plus. But if the symbols are different, for example, it's a plus and a minus or a minus and a plus, then that will equal a minus. Now you're probably thinking, I don't get that. Let's go through a few examples a bit later on and it'll all make sense. But let's go through when do we use this rule first. This rule only applies when symbols are next to each other. So this video we're doing now will only deal with symbols that are next to each other. We also apply this rule when we are multiplying or dividing, and that'll be the next video. So let's go through a few examples and see what are we talking about here when they're the same or when they're different. Well, if I look at example 1, and if you need to use a number line, you can use a number line to do this. 3 minus 6. Well, that's quite simple. You start at 3 and you go back 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you end up at negative 3. You start at minus 3 and you minus another 6. And you end up at minus 9. And you can check these on your calculator as well to make sure you're doing the right thing. Let's add 3 numbers. 10 plus 6 is 16. 16 minus 20 gives you negative 4. Okay, quite simple. Let's move on to example 4. Now in example 4, you'll see there's a plus and a minus right next to each other. And if you remember, the rule was when they're right next to each other and they're different, that equates to a negative. So this is the same as 3 minus 2. We'll go through that one more time. The plus and the minus are right next to each other. That means that they go for the rule where if the symbols are next to each other and they're different, that equals a negative. So that's 3 minus 2. And we know 3 minus 2 is 1. Let's go on to example 5. Now example 5 says 4 minus 4. So we have two symbols next to each other and they're the same. They're both minuses. So when the symbols are the same and they're next to each other, that equates to a plus. So this is the same as 4 plus 4, which equals 8. Let's keep going. Example 6. Example 6 has a plus and a minus. And those symbols are right next to each other and they're different. That means they equate to a negative. So this is the same as minus 4 minus 3. Minus 4 minus another 3 is minus 7. You're starting to get the hang of it. Let's go on to example 7. Example 7 says 3 minus plus 2. Well, they're next to each other and they're different, so that equals a negative. 3 minus 2 is 1. Let's make it a little bit harder and add a third number into this. So question 8 says, or example 8 says, minus 6 plus minus 2 minus minus 4. So first we have to change the symbols that are next to each other into one symbol. So the plus and minus, they're different, so they become a minus. And the minus, they're the same, so they become a plus. So we end up with minus 6 minus another 2 plus 4. So minus 6 minus 2 is minus 8. Minus 8 plus 4 is minus 4. And you can check that on your calculator. Well, let's change it up a bit. Sometimes the symbols are written with brackets when we're substituting or something like that. So if I had minus 4 plus minus 10. So let's take that box away so you can see that a bit clearer. Minus 4 plus minus 10. Well, those two symbols next to each other, the bracket doesn't mean much. Plus and the minus becomes a minus. So it's minus 4 minus 10. Which is minus 14. And we do the same thing in example 10. But now we have two minuses in the beginning. Minus and a minus, they're the same, so it becomes a plus. A plus and a minus, they're different, so they become a minus. So you have 6 minus 3, which equals 3. Hopefully you got the hang of that. Let's try a few questions. So, these are the questions here. Pause the video, give it a shot, and then come back and look at the recommended answers. Okay, you should have finished by now. Hopefully you got them all right. If you didn't, go back and watch the video again and fix up the little errors that you may have. That's all for today, guys. Take care.